Welcome to Made in the Low Country. My name is Stephanie, and today I'm going to be making cold processed homemade soap. The book I'm going to be using for my recipes is Simple and Natural Soap Making by Jan Berry. This is my #1 favorite soap making book. I am going to tweak a couple of the recipes, but this book is wonderful. I'll link it below. So the first recipe we're going to be making is a beginner's Bastille soap, and then we'll move on to an oatmeal, milk, and honey soap. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. The first thing I'd like to do is talk about a few of the supplies that we're going to need today. First and foremost, olive oil. You can use regular olive oil. I just had this on hand. This is organic extra virgin olive oil, so I'm going to use it. It's been in my pantry for quite a while. It needs to be used, so I'm going to use this one today. Another ingredient in Bastille soap is coconut oil, and I buy organic when I can. The lye I'm going to be using, I ordered from Amazon. It is from Essential Depot. I'll link as much of this below as I can. But I ordered this from Amazon, and it's by Essential Depot. I've really had good results with it, so I stick with it. A good pair of glasses is always good practice. And of course gloves. Mine look really rough. They've been used a lot. Oh, as you can see, I don't know if you can see this, I write soap on everything that I use, and I keep it all separated from my kitchen tools because I don't want any cross-contamination with my soaping tools and my kitchen tools. You'll want some molds to cure your soap in. I picked both of these up at a thrift store. These work fine. They're silicone. I like them for soap, and it took me a long time to collect everything that I have. I didn't order everything just right in the beginning, so you don't have to put a lot of money into it at first. A loaf pan lined with wax paper, or I think it's parchment paper, works just as well. Or like I said, go hit up some thrift stores. You can almost always find these little silicone molds in there. Earlier I said I like to tweak my soap recipes just a little. And so a couple of optional ingredients. These are not anything that you need in the beginning, but if you decide you want to add, this is silk fibers. Silk gives your soap slip. It really makes it silky and slippy. I had a recipe that called for this in another book, and when I ordered it, I got a huge bag, so this will last my lifetime. I've shared it with 2 friends so far, and I still have enough probably to last me a lifetime. And the other thing that I add to my soaps, which I didn't in the beginning, is sodium lactate. This is 60% sodium lactate. I add 1 teaspoon per pound. And the reason I started adding this, I love natural soaps, but they do get gummy and soft in a shower, and this helps keep your bars hard. You don't have to have this. If you don't want to add it, you don't have to, but I've started adding this, and I notice my bars do last a lot longer in the shower now. And then the next thing I really like to do is I go ahead and measure out everything so I'm ready to go. You're going to need 227 grams of distilled water. I like to do my lye solution in stainless steel and use stainless steel spoons to stir it. And I always put it down and do it in my sink. It's just been my habit, and it works well. The next thing you're going to need is 108 grams of your lye. We're going to sprinkle that slowly into the water once I measure that. You'll also need 142 grams of coconut oil and 652 grams of olive oil. Now, this recipe also calls for up to 35 grams of lavender essential oil. I don't add scents to my soaps typically because I really just don't care for scents in my soap. And I like to give them as gifts, and different people are sensitive to different scents, so I typically don't add them unless someone specifically requests a scent and I'm making that specifically for them. So we're going to leave out the scent today, but if you'd like, you can add up to 35 grams of lavender essential oil into this recipe. Well, I just discovered that both of my gloves have holes in them, so it's time to toss this pear. I guess I'm just going to have to use some surgical gloves that I have instead. One other thing I forgot to mention earlier is a digital scale. This is not my food scale. I won't use that because I'm getting ready to measure out the lye onto the scale. So I don't even cross my kitchen scale with my soaping and cooking. I keep them completely separate. So this is just an inexpensive scale. I think I picked up at Walmart for about 10 bucks. And it works great. All right, we need 108 grams of lye. The first thing we're going to do is slowly sprinkle our lye into our water. Not the water into the lye. You never want to pour water into lye. You just want to sprinkle the lye slowly and stir as you go. Just think of snowflakes on the water. I think that's the what the book used to help you remember that the lye goes into the water, not the other way around. So just slowly start sprinkling. And if you want to wear a mask, I used to wear a mask, but I'm not wearing one today because it makes it hard to talk. One other tool that I find helpful is a digital thermometer. This up at Harbor Freight for around $10. Well worth the money. You'll want to add your silk fibers to your hot lye. So I usually just snip a little piece off, and then I like to cut it up very small, and then I stir it into the hot lye. Now it's time to melt our coconut oil. All this is once again a dedicated pot to my soap making, a dishcloth in the bottom, and this will be the jar that the bowl that we actually mix our soap and bring it to trace. Add the coconut oil. So we're gonna let that melt, and then we'll combine it with the olive oil. Alright, so here is our hot, it's pretty warm coconut oil. It's melted. So I'm just going to add the olive oil to it. And that'll actually help cool it off a little bit. Now we need to check the temperatures. We want our temperature, the temperature of our lye and the temperature of our oils to be within 10 degrees of each other, and somewhere between 100 and 110 degrees. Alright, so our oils are 108 degrees and our lye is 114 degrees or 113. So I'm going to stir the lye for a couple of minutes and see if I can get it to cool off and come down to temperature, and then we can start mixing. And it's reading at right around 100 degrees, and we are there. So now it's time to add the sodium lactate. Alright, my oil's at 101.5. My lye is at 108.5. So we can combine. I use a stick blender or an immersion blender like I showed you before. It's dedicated for my soap making. And with this, we're going to do a combination of stirring and pulsing until we reach trace. And we do this slowly because we want to be sure all of the oils emulsify into the lye solution, and you don't want to reach trace too fast before that happens. So let's go ahead. We're going to pour our lye into our oils always. Stir, and you can see it's already thickening up a little bit. Getting cloudy. Alright, so this is what I mean by stir, and then I'm going to pulse. Luckily I found some other kitchen gloves. I like to start off pretty slowly. Some soaps will reach trace a lot faster than others. And it also depends on the temperature of your oils and your lye. It's getting thicker. We're almost to a light trace. Now if you were going to be adding an essential oil or some type of scent, you would add it when it reaches a light trace. So we've reached a light trace. You can see that when I let it drip onto the surface, it sits for a moment before it sinks in. So that's considered a light trace. Now is when you would want to add your scent or essential oil. But since I'm not adding, I'm going to keep going till we reach a full trace, and then I'll put it in my mold. We're at trace, so I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. So when I move it around and let it drop, it doesn't sink in. It's like a very thick pudding. So we're ready to put in the mold. To clean my stick blender, I fill up a bowl of water and a little bit of dish soap and just turn it on, and that cleans it very well. I'll wipe it with a paper towel first though, because I don't want to put all this down my drain. Give it a few bounces on the counter just to be sure there's no air pockets. Right, if you would like to sprinkle some flowers or herbs or dried fruit, anything on top, now's the time to do it. I prefer to just leave my soaps plain. I used to put pretty flowers on top when I first started making soap, but what happened more than not, it just ended up down the drain. So I don't waste the time or the money anymore. But if you're gifting it and you want to put something pretty on it, or if you just like it pretty for yourself, now's the time to add it. And there we have it. So I'm going to cover it with a piece of parchment paper, put on the lid, and I'm going to cover it with this towel. Actually, I'm probably going to need a bigger towel. I'm going to also cover it with another towel because I want to keep it warm so it'll go through gel phase and the center will not be dark. If it doesn't complete its gel phase, sometimes you'll see soap that the center has a little ring in the middle that's darker than the actual soap. That's because it didn't get warm enough to completely go through gel phase, so the center stays dark. All right, I'm going to put this away, and then we're going to move on to our next soap. The next soap is still a beginner's soap. It's very easy to make. It just has a few more ingredients, but it's well worth the little bit of extra time and care to make it because milk enriched soaps are so lovely. During the first 24 hours, you'll want to check on your soaps periodically to be sure they're not cracking. If they get overheated, they could crack. Sorry, I can't do it with one hand, but if they get overheated, they may crack. So then you just want to remove some of the covers off of them. So it's a good practice just to check it periodically and be sure it's not overheating and cracking. Now let's move on to our second soap. This soap is an oatmeal, milk, and honey soap. This one has a few more ingredients, and we're going to go over the ingredients first. So first and foremost, this is milk based, so you need to freeze your milk because the sugars in the milk causes the lye to scorch it very easily. So I just froze some whole milk in this little, I use this for my herbs when I'm freezing fresh herbs. So I just froze whole milk, and I'm gonna pop that into my container, and I'm gonna very slowly sprinkle my lye over that, and I'm gonna take several minutes. So this is 248 grams of frozen milk, and to that I'm also gonna add 7 grams of distilled water. We're also going to add 112 grams of lye. I don't want to touch that without my gloves. 112 grams of lye to that. And we're going to slowly mix that so we don't burn our milk. My hard oils are 198 grams. Move this over. 198 grams of coconut oil, and to that I've added 113 grams of beef tallow. You could also, without having to change the amounts of your lye, you could also use cocoa butter or lard. Liquid oils, I have 369 grams of olive oil and 113 grams of sweet almond oil. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these hard oils on the stove just like I did in the last video. I have my pot of boiling water with a cloth in there, and I'm going to do it earlier now because we want these to cool, because I'm going to slowly mix this lye solution. So I want these to melt and cool a little bit before we add. We don't want to add ice cold lye solution to oils that have been melted, because it will solidify it very quickly and it can cause a false trace. So I'm going to go ahead and get this going. But once we get it mixed up we bring it to a light trace, then we're going to add 1 tablespoon of ground or powdered oats. We're also going to add 1.5 teaspoon of honey mixed with 1.5 teaspoons of water, distilled water. Gone ahead and mix that and stirred it up. And for this one, I'm going to add a scent so I can show you how it works. I'm just doing a very light vanilla essential oil. I believe I bought this at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. I'm not quite sure. I hope you can see that. This is a vanilla essential oil made for soap making, and you can use up to 35 grams of an essential oil. I'm only doing 15 grams because, again, I don't like very strong scented soaps. All right, let's get started. So I've got my hard oils going behind me. I'm going to take several minutes to mix this lye solution, so I'm probably going to speed this up so you don't have to see, but I'm going to do this very slowly. Mix it very, very slowly to be sure my milk doesn't burn. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 7 grams of water. Go ahead and put my silk in there. Don't forget your glasses. You're going to notice the milk will start to melt very quickly. You can hear hear as I'm scraping the bottom, you don't hear any granules in there, so that means they've all dissolved properly. So we're at 79 degrees. It's very important, the oils that you melt on the stove, that you melt it completely. You don't have any grainy bits in there, because that would be oil that would not emulsify into your soap, so you want to be sure it's completely melted. I'm going to go ahead and add the sodium lactate. I'm doing a teaspoon and a half for this recipe. Now I'm going to add my hot oils into my olive oil and sweet almond oil. I'm going to let that cool for a few minutes, and then we'll add our last solution. Now this soap I'm going to put in the freezer instead of letting it cure on my counter. I don't want it to go through a gel phase because I want it to keep the really white look to it. So I'm going to freeze it so it doesn't go through the gel phase, which will darken it. Have your mold or whatever you're going to pour your soap in ready. I'm going to slowly add my lye solution. This typically will reach trace pretty quickly, so I'm just going to pulse the immersion blender. I'm not going to hold it like I did the last one, because this one can reach trace very quickly. I want to be sure all these oils are blended well. So we're just we're going to bring it to a very light trace, and then we're going to add our oatmeal, honey, and scent. I'm just going to do a couple of quick light pulses, and I'm going to stir. I'm going to keep repeating that until I get to a light trace. Yes, we are there. All right, so I'm going to add my 1 tablespoon of powdered oats, 1.5 teaspoon of honey mixed with 1.5 teaspoons of distilled water, and my vanilla essential oil. Just going to stir it. It again. All right, we are at trace, so you can see this. See how it just stays on top? I can draw an S in it and it stays. So we are at trace. We're in our mold, and then I'm going to cover it with a lid, and then I'm going to go pop it right in my freezer, and we'll be back in a couple of days to unmold it and cut it. See how pretty the color is? We want it to stay this really light color. As a matter of fact, I think I have some soaps that I did the same recipe that I did not put in the freezer. I will compare them so you can see the color difference in a couple of days. Again, if you'd like to sprinkle some rose petals or lavender buds on top, you can do that. Air pockets. I'm going to put this lid on, and then I'm gonna go put it in my freezer, and I will see you, I'll be back in a couple of days. It's been 2 days since we made the soap, so it's time to unmold it and possibly cut it. Sometimes I might wait an extra day if it still feels a little sticky before cutting, but we're gonna go ahead and take it out of the mold and see how it looks. I really like silicone molds because soap pops out of it so easy. But if you use a loaf pan, just line it with parchment where you can grab the parchment and pull it up also. That works just as well. Okay, so the soap is no longer caustic. Since it's been 2 days, you can touch it safely. It does still feel sticky, so I'm probably gonna wait till tomorrow to cut it, but I'm just gonna put it on basically a baker's rack so it can get airflow around it. But this is what we have. This is the Bastille soap. This one is the milk, honey, and oatmeal soap, and it has been in my deep freezer for 2 days, so it's still frozen solid. It has a really nice light color because it didn't go through gel phase. I'm going to show you a comparison of this one. This one's still pretty sticky. I'm going to show you a comparison of this and one that has gone through the gel phase, the identical recipe, when I cut this. Okay, so here's this one. When I cure my soaps, I like to put them on a baker's rack so it can get airflow all the way around, especially once they're sliced. So I'm going to leave them here overnight, and then I will come back tomorrow and cut them. I am going to cut my soap. You do not need a box like this to cut your soap. I just got this last year after making soap for almost probably 7 or 8 years. I used to cut it on a cutting board with a knife like this. Then I ordered one of these, and then I started cutting it with this, and then I just got the box last year. So you do not need this box. I do like it because it cuts even bars. In hindsight, if you're going to invest in one, I wish I had ordered one of the cheese type cutters with the wire. I like that better because you can cut the whole bar at once with the wire, but this works, so I'm going to use it. So we'll cut it and take a look at what we've got. This is the Bastille soap. And now for the milk, honey, and oats soap. This is a little bit of a different blade. It just gives the soap a little texture. You can hear my chickens outside. So both of these soaps are great for beginners. They're really good beginner soaps. This soap, the oat and the milk and honey, has a few more ingredients that you might not be able to source as easily, but they're still both very easy soaps. I just want to show you the difference between putting it in the freezer and not allowing it to go through gel phase. This is the identical recipe that I allowed to go through the gel phase on the counter and didn't freeze it or make it cool. So you can see the difference in color. So it's your choice. They're both the same. They both work just as well. So I'm going to finish cutting these up. I hope you make some soap and enjoy it. Once your soap has been cut, it needs to sit for 6 to 8 weeks to cure before using. Just sit it somewhere where it has good airflow all the way around. I picked up this card at a yard sale on Saturday for just a couple of bucks, and it actually is perfect for my needs because not only can I leave it to cure here, I can also store it here. If you have any questions, please drop them below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.